For the artists, for the passionate. Welcome to the Adventures Elsewhere podcast. Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to the Adventures Elsewhere podcast. Or welcome, if it's your first time. I am your host, Jay Black. This one is all about my second novel. This is the Black Executioner episode. So when this is uploaded, I believe this will be uploaded the day after the book is published. So yeah, it came out yesterday. It's my second novel, and a little reintroduction since actually talking about the individual genres and things like that of my books is not something I do that much on this podcast. So Black Executioner is a straight thriller. I've looked at various different subgenres. It doesn't really neatly fit into any of them. It's just a straight shot good time. And our protagonist is none other than a certain Mr. Ai Nagashima. Yukai's last war hero, Yukai's champion. So I have so much fondness for this book because this was the book I was never really meant to write. The first book I wrote in the Determined Ones was Dead Penstemons. It was Coney's story, and I had decided as part of my outlook on writing, one of the things that I had decided back then, and I'm still very staunchly on this, by the way, is that I was never going to do a direct sequel. And I just had so many lingering questions from Dead Penstemons, and a lot of them circled around Ai. And honestly, it just came from one very almost throwaway line that Coney had in his internal monologue of, I wonder what's happening to Ai right now. And I thought, you know what? I'm damn curious about that too. I want to know what's happening to Ai. And I resisted following that for a really long time because I didn't want to write a sequel. And it's not. I mean, the reason I decided to just write it the way I did, and this story is not a direct sequel to Dead Penstemons. It's not, and it was never going to be, but, that early in the concept of this entire massive thing, I don't really see how I could possibly have known that. The way I managed to get around this idea of it being a direct sequel was, well, this is Ai's story, it's all about him and what's happening to him, so let's hear it from him. Let's hear what he has to say, and we'll see what happens. And thus, the structure of the Determined Ones was inadvertently born, that each book would be each individual character's story. And it would follow them, it would be a standalone, it would be one and done in its own right. But there would be enough little questions and things that you want to know more. You want to know, what's all this backstory between Ai and Coney, Ai and Haru, and Shinichi, and all of these things. I'm getting ahead of myself. But this was the book that really, I often credit Mr. Nakagami with making the Determined Ones so big, and rightly so. But we wouldn't have gotten Mr. Nakagami without Black Executioner, because in much the same fashion, I just knew there was so much more to Haru, and I was so curious about him, that just naturally happened afterwards. Now, one of the things that's been really funny going through the publishing process with this is that at one point I actually reopened the first draft because there was some dialogue that I wanted to put back in that I only had in the first draft, so I actually went over to my bookshelf, got the first draft and opened it. And I realised that it's been so long since I drafted this book, this is a real peek behind the curtain for you, that the pages are starting to turn yellow. You can see literally how long the first draft is on the side of the notebook because those pages are starting to turn yellow on the edge, which is just kind of I've known this for months now because that was something I did 6 months ago when this went in for first round edits, just before then. I still haven't really properly processed that whole idea of, wow, okay, publishing takes a while. I know that might sound really disheartening for those looking to get published, but also, it's never too late. These books that you write, these pieces that you write from a really long time ago now, they'll have their moment. That's how I choose to look at it. I've mentioned several times on the podcast that I got my publishing contract ultimately through a pitch contest. And I started that pitch contest. It was a really weird formula, a whole month long. It was grueling. But I started that whole initiative with Mr. Nakagami. I thought, this is my strongest book. This is the one I'm going to pitch first, so that I have the best chance from the off. It was very, very, very nearly Black Executioner. It was almost a coin flip on the day because I had these formulas that I was sticking to make actually scheduling a month's worth of pitches possible, really. And I very, very nearly swapped the order to make it Black Executioner first. Who knows what would have happened if I did? Ultimately, I didn't, and I went with Mr. Nakagami first, but I thought that would be something interesting to note in this episode. And what's been funny is actually, despite everything, the editing and publishing process for Black Executioner has been really, really smooth. This has been a very easy process besides one big thing. And that's the cover design. I talked about this a bit with Mr. Nakagami, but Black Executioner has had so many covers over the years. Because the first cover I actually drew was before I finished the first draft, and I didn't like it, so I immediately did a whole spate more of them, even back then. And I actually posted a little while ago on my social media the nearly cover of this book, which is this big sort of ink style portrait of Ai with his katana and a very cool coat and all of these things. Yeah, I must have gone through at least a dozen cover designs for this book. And I really wish I was exaggerating, but I'm just not. I have gone through so many. And there was one moment, and the thing is, I had a lot that I didn't like, but I also had quite a few that I did. And I was sort of thinking, especially once I realised that this whole thing was a compendium and that ideally there would be some consistency, some sort of synergy between them. I was thinking, how is that going to work? How am I going to make this work? Because I really like this one, but I don't see how I can make that work for Mr. Nakagami because Haru actually just looks really weird in this style. That was a genuine problem. And all of these other things where there were some things that were so hyper-specific to Black Executioner that I couldn't really see how they would work for anything else that I had written at the time. The time that the covers for the entire compendium clicked was actually when I had the idea for Shadow on the Snow. And once I knew what I was doing for Shadow on the Snow, then the rest became easy. And this was the very next one concepted because it was just so obvious what to do once I had the Shadow on the Snow concept done. Man in a suit with a katana is just awesome. The weird thing about this one, when I was drawing the cover, the file was actually glitching like mad. I actually had to duplicate the file and correct glitches in the end. it was really, really odd. I was having all of this overspill on fills and just having bits of white where there just shouldn't be. It was really, really odd. Don't know what that was about, but you know, it all got fixed, but that was stressful because I didn't realise that it had glitched. I'm not sure that it had glitched until a week before it was meant to go in. And I thought, oh, it's perfect, it's fine, I'll do one last look at it, and then saw this huge glitch and was like, oh no. So, yeah, that wasn't fun. But hey, it all worked out okay in the end. One thing I really wanted to do in this episode is talk about why I love my man Ai Nagashima so much. Because he gets a lot of love on my social media. I talk about him all the time, he's always around. And it's sort of interesting because writing Dead Pen's Demons, I didn't like him one bit. It's just partly because I had the wrong impression of him, but also because of the way he interacts with Coney in that book and how Coney sees that everything's in first person. It's through his eyes, through all of his misconceptions. I had a very wrong impression of who I was as a character. But I was so curious about him, almost from page one of writing Black Executioner, from the very, very, very early stages, and the scenes that got cut because why were they there in the opening? That they were not good openers. Why? I realised extremely quickly that I had this very wrong idea of him. And he wasn't who I thought he was, really, at all. And he was someone that was a lot better. He was someone that was very interesting. He was someone that was fascinating. And one of the things that became clear very quickly, and it's a really big part of the book and of a lot of the big theme in the book, Ai is a very, very principled man. He has his interesting, at points, moral code and beliefs, and he sticks to it, to the point of sacrifice, and extraordinary sacrifice at that. It's not just that, you know, he loses this or he loses that. Like, the fact that Ai makes it past the halfway point of this book is kind of a lot. Like, even before the story started, he sacrificed so much, and it all hurts, but he just keeps going because that's what he believes is the right thing to do. And the whole reason that his promise and treason is in the tagline is because of that. A promise is a promise. A promise is something very important to him. It matters. And he is one of those people that truly and utterly never gives up. The thought of giving up is just, you know, he loses so much, he goes through so much, but he'll reinvent himself to be who he needs to be, what he has to be. That's just such an instinct for him because he's had to do it more than once, so it's like, okay, I guess we're doing this again. It's just who he is. He doesn't give up. When I think of never give up in the tagline, one of the first people I think of is him. It's true for all the determined ones, but you really, truly and utterly see it with him and what he goes through. And above all else, he just doesn't take things for granted either. He doesn't assume that he really deserves much of anything, and he will earn his way to doing things effectively as if from scratch. The idea that, you know, he served in this war and he's a war hero and all of these things, he disagrees with that, partly. And that's a big thing. But it also sort of doesn't really matter to him because, well, that's the past, this is who I am now. What do you need me to do now? And the idea that those things will carry forward after 15 years, it almost doesn't really occur to him. It's just, okay, well, what do you need me to do in order to? He doesn't expect to get anything if he doesn't explicitly earn it there and then. These are the things that really made me fall in love with him so quickly in the drafting process. And this isn't the only time this has happened in the compendium, I'm just going to put that out there. This is a really interesting book to release at this point in the compendium as well. I do think this is somewhat of the perfect follow to Mr. Nakagami. You could argue that about a lot of the books in the compendium, but you see so much of Ai in Mr. Nakagami. There are so many interactions with Haru. And then for a while, Ai disappears. And you get the impression of some of the things that he's done and the things he's working on. It becomes quite clear. But then there's a whole nother stretch where he disappears completely. And one of those things that I really love from Mr. Nakagami is thinking, well, what was he doing? What happened? How did he survive? Wait, he ended up over here? Because where he ends up is not where Haru expected him to be. You know, what he's doing and how he came to all of these things. How did these things happen? What was he doing? Where did this particular thing come from? Do we get an answer to that? Little things about Ai's backstory. I mean, who is the Black Executioner? Exactly. There's a hint at that in Mr. Nakagami, but Haru doesn't know. Is the legend as simple as it seems? Or is there something more complicated or more simple happening here? This is also a great link to the next release in the compendium. This is a great link to Shinichi. Ai is still grieving Shinichi's loss. He looms quite heavily at points in this book, and you get curious as to who Shinichi was, and what did he do? Especially towards the end, I think. I mean, when I finished writing Black Executioner, I very, very nearly jumped into writing Shadow on the Snow off of that because I was so curious about Shinichi. And given how much more time he's been given since then, I'm sure you will be too. This is also a great opener to the compendium. One of the reasons I nearly pitched this first in Spark Pit is because I actually thought this might be a better opener than Mr. Nakagami, because it's a straight short thriller. It's a bit more of a crowd pleaser. Mr. Nakagami is a very big, sweeping, it's quite an unusual book. This isn't in the same way. And if you're coming to the compendium for the first time, I mean, there's a whole reason I release things in the order that I do. But there's also a very big reason why it says on the back of every single book that you can read them in any order, and there's a reason I designed them like that. There are several. But this is a great place to start if you want to know what the Determined Ones is like, and you also want a book that's a bit shorter as well than Mr. Nakagami. This is a great place to start. It's actually coming at 165 pages, which is well shorter than I thought it would be, given that Mr. Nakagami is 200. But I do also think that's because the chapter number is drastically different. You know, different stories, different story structures call for different things on this one. And I'll be remiss not to thank some people at this stage as well. I mean, the Hype Heroes have been absolutely incredible this time round. Hype Heroes, thank you so much. And you know, my friends on social media, my friends out there, you've also been so great, and you've also been really excited for this book, probably because I yak on about Ai all the time. You know, my parents have been really supportive, and they always want to know more about my books. They seem to be really, really invested in this one, so that's really awesome. And last but certainly not least on this one, Mandy, my editor, has been great on this book. When she returned the first round edits to me, she was saying that parts of this book squeak her out, which was really funny because this book is decidedly more violent than Mr. Nakagami. I mean, Mr. Nakagami couldn't get much less violent in many which is mainly because, you know, if there's blood, Haru looks away. I is a soldier. But yeah, I gotta thank the publisher for, again, taking a chance on my books. It's all very much appreciated. One last thing though. I have dubbed very spontaneously from a random Pinterest post I made on like New Year's Eve. I have, yeah, that's where it came from. You might have seen me talk about this on social media already, but I've dubbed 2026 the year of thrillers. Because I have so many thrillers that I'm working on and releasing this year. Black Executioner is the first and is arguably the most thriller that there is. But you know, there's City of Tiny Lights coming in June. That's a standalone novelette thriller that's not tied to the Determined Ones. That's just its own story. I really, really love that one. Shadow on the Snow is coming this year as well, military thriller. Beneath the Moon is going on pre-order at the end of the year. That's a revenge thriller. Maybe there's more? I mean, in terms of novelettes I want to write, I have a whole episode on that if you're interested in more detail. But I have a slasher I'm writing that's narratively much closer to thriller than horror, so I always sort of put that as in the thriller box. And I also have a noir, which, you know, is, as I say on this podcast, thriller's sad cousin. So this really is the year of thrillers for me. And, you know, one other thing I do want to do this year is I'm starting to build a decent bank of stories. So, you know, there could be more coming, should I see the right subcall. So keep your eyes peeled. And the places to do that are basically social media. If you want to hear more about my writing, in particular, Twitter's the place to be. That's where the vast majority of my writing stuff is. I do writing updates pretty much every morning where you can see exactly what I'm working on in pretty much real time. I host the monthly Thrills prompts too, and would love to have you. Jade Black 21 on Twitter. If you're liking the unscripted chaos vibe of the podcast, Instagram is the place to be. Jade_Black21 on there. I don't know what I'm doing. It's random, it's chaos, it's the podcast, it's indie book hype, it's random stuff. Join the fun. I'm also Jade_Black21 on Pinterest. That's a place where there's lots of exclusive art and world building, and the National Flower Bouquet art piece is on there as well. There's a whole bank of snippets from Mr. Nakagami and Black Executioner now, and all sorts of exclusive little teasers and in more detail about what's coming in this year of thrillers. If all of that sounds great to you, Jade_Black21 on Pinterest. I also exist on Blue Sky for game dev purposes, but I do not have time to dev at the minute, and yeah, I mean, I'm there if you're also there. I'll pop in once in a blue moon. If you are published, or well on the way, please do get in touch. I would love to be a part of your journey and give you an interview. My email is on the screen. A few things to note: Indian Self Pub, you are the people I want to hear from. And also, from now on, I am prioritising indie darklit, because there are so few spaces for indie darklit, and I'm trying to be the change I want to see. And no, darklit does not include dark fantasy. Also, if you haven't heard, I do have somewhat of a sister show where I review ARCs in certain genres. You can find the information to that elsewhere on my channel. I have a full video doing the introduction to that. It's also timestamped, for what it's worth. Of course, Black Executioner is my second published novel. I've talked about Mr. Nakagami already. I do have 2 published novelettes. So Count the Stars is a cosy little slice of life preview to the Determined Ones from our 8th Determined One, Isamu. If that sounds like your vibe, that's the cozy-ish anthology. Charcoal Rain is a standalone noir novelette. If you like the sound of Thriller's sad cousin, Charcoal Rain is definitely that. That's in the Dream Court anthology. You can find links to all of that in the description if you are so inclined. But for now, that's about all from me. I'm really happy Black Executioner is out there. I love this book, and I hope you do too. And until next time, you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a like, or commenting, or subscribing. It really does help the channel a lot. All music is done by me. Copyright Jade Black 2025.